When it comes to Adesanya versus Du Plessis, a lot of people seem to have a pretty definitive opinion on the outcome of this fight, but I happen to think that this fight is extremely difficult to predict because there's so many different variables that could come into play. So in this video, I'm going to take a look at both guys and go through the different criteria that I think could favor one or the other, and after doing that, I will tell you where I'm leaning for this fight. But before I get to that, I do have to ask, if you find that you enjoy the video, please give it a like, and please subscribe to the channel if you're not already. I would love to have you back for future content. Now, when it comes to breaking down this fight, I think there's a lot of different things that need to be considered. I get the impression that a lot of people are writing off Israel Adesanya based on his last performance with Sean Strickland, and in the process of that, they are forgetting all the things that he's done prior, including knocking out Alex Pereira cold just 2 fights ago. And if we stay on the idea of Alex Pereira, who is now considered to be absolutely one of the best in the world, a lot of people also forget that in their first fight, Adesanya almost finished him at the end of the first round and was winning that fight until Alex caught up in the 5th round. And when it comes to his loss against Sean Strickland, I think there were 2 things at play there that really mattered. First, it was pretty evident that Adesanya was overlooking Sean. He viewed him as pretty much just a filler fight, and at the same time, it turned out that Sean Strickland's actually a lot better than people thought. So while Strickland's style is a bad match for Izzy, I do think if they fight again, it's going to be much closer, because Adesanya will study him and he does have a high fight IQ. Now, when it comes to this fight with Du Plessis, we know that Adesanya is motivated for this. This is the fight that he really wanted before things switched over to Sean Strickland. So everybody should expect that we're going to see the best version of Adesanya that we've seen in a long time. And if you look back to that second fight with Alex Pereira, he could not have had his back to the wall more than he did in that fight. If he had lost that second fight to Alex Pereira, that pretty much would have been it for his entire career. But instead of folding under that pressure like a lot of people would have done, he excelled under it and was able to get one of the best outcomes that he possibly could have had. Now, when it comes to the physical advantages that he's going to have in this fight, there's a lot of them. He's going to have a significant reach advantage to start with. He's also going to have the height advantage, and it is also fair to say that he's faster. And while he hasn't had many fights where he's taken a lot of damage, he has shown at times that he can be pretty durable as well. And on top of all that, this will likely be the most recovered and fresh Adesanya that we've ever seen. So the bottom line here is that there are many reasons to look at Israel Adesanya and give him the edge in this fight. Now, if I switch over to Dricus, I think there's also a lot here that you could say favors him. First and foremost, his confidence at this point is at an all-time high, and unlike Chael Sonnen, I don't think there was any point where Dricus was afraid or intimidated by Adesanya. The second thing that I would say favors Dricus is the fact that his style, much like Sean Strickland, is probably a bad style for Adesanya. For a long time, people would criticize Dricus for his sloppy sort of style, but as it turns out, that's actually what makes him effective. And it is that sloppy style that's going to make it difficult for Adesanya to formulate a game plan against. Whereas Adesanya really wasn't able to mount much of an offense against Sean Strickland, Dricus did do a good job of getting through his defense and busting him up a bit. Dricus was also able to do that against Robert Whittaker when pretty much nobody else has been able to. So whereas Izzy is often able to avoid taking too many shots in his fights, that may not end up being the case here because of the way that Dricus is able to get through people's defenses. Now, from a standpoint of physical advantages, I said earlier that Adesanya has a lot of the traditional ones in his favor. So for Dricus, the thing that I think would probably stand out most for him is a strength advantage, and I believe he will be able to control any areas of the fight that depend on strength, such as a clinch or on the ground. But beyond that, I think one of the other major factors in Dricus' favor is that he's just very tough and very durable. He's exactly the kind of guy that can take a beating and keep moving forward, and it will be very difficult for Adesanya to make him mentally quit the way he did to Paulo Costa. And finally, Dricus does have the youth advantage here, coming in at 5 years younger, and we don't know at 35 if all the fights that Adesanya's had over his entire career are going to start taking their toll on him. So now that I've covered some of the important considerations for each of these guys, I'm going to go through my predictions for the fight itself. With most fights, I usually have a pretty strong feeling as to how the fight's going to go overall, but I really don't have that in this case, and I can see this one going so many different ways. The bottom line here is I'm not going to be surprised by any outcome in this fight, and I don't think you should either. But there are a few things that I think are more likely than not. First and foremost there, I think this is probably a decision fight. I will not be surprised if either of these guys gets finished, because both are obviously capable of doing that, but my general feeling with it is that it probably is a 5-rounder. I also think that the first round is likely to start out pretty slow. Adesanya is going to want to be cautious after that experience with Sean Strickland, and Dricus is going to want to take a round to find his range. I can also see Adesanya landing a higher volume of strikes on Dricus, but Dricus with a lower volume landing some big shots that you can tell bother Adesanya. I feel like Dricus is going to get a little frustrated on the feet at times and decide to try to take the fight to the ground or at least push it up against the fence. And finally, after 5 rounds, I think it will go to a decision where you think that one of them did enough to get the job done, but you're not completely sure. And if I had to guess, I would say that Dricus will look like he's the one who wore more damage in the fight, but at the same time also had more control time. So my own personal strategy when it comes to bets on this fight will definitely not be to pick either guy to win, but instead I'm going to try to use bets that will match up with what I think are some of the likely things to happen throughout the fight. So for example, I will look for very specific bets such as Dricus' number of takedowns or the number of strikes that Adesanya will land. But with all that said, if I had to pick one person to win this fight, I'll probably edge it very slightly to Dricus to win. I think with his confidence at an all-time high, his very strong mental game, and him having the most likely ability to decide where the fight takes place, all combined with the fact that I'm just not seeing the same fire that we used to see from Adesanya, I feel like all of that will add up to give him that slight edge. But like I said, I wouldn't even be surprised if Adesanya looks better than he's ever looked and he comes out and completely dominates Dricus. But the fun part is, since this fight is so evenly matched, you're going to get a lot of people with very definitive opinions who end up being very wrong. And that means there will be a lot of roasting afterward, and I look forward to enjoying it. So that's going to be it for my thoughts on this fight. Do you agree with me that this will be a very difficult fight to predict and could go either way? Or do you think that one or the other is going to really dominate and make a statement? Let me know all your thoughts down in the comments. And once again, if you enjoyed the video, please make sure to give it a like and subscribe to the channel so I can have you back for future content. As always, I appreciate all of you for being here, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.